It's just to clarify a point, but it's very illustrative of people having half, a handle on something. So you mentioned there about the school in Acton and saying that they were anti-Semitic because they mentioned about this thing that connecting Jews with pigs. Actually, that comes from Jewish teaching because it's referring to a group of the Jews who went against the Sabbath.
But we're talking about five-year-old children.
Yeah.
We're talking about five-year-old children. Anthony.
No, but you didn't listen to... You didn't get the model.
Can I talk about
Anthony.
five-year-old...
Wait, Anthony.
You didn't listen to the end of what I was saying, Nicky, so you cut me off. So there is a lesson, because the lesson about it was about people who disobeyed the Sabbath. So
right.
they were taking... So it wasn't about Jews in particular, it was about a group, and it's a knowledge that was passed down from the Jews to the Muslims.
I'd like to talk about
Andrew, do you want to...
I just think that's... I think that whatever it was about, it's not a good thing to say, right?
It's not. It's one school that made a mistake.
Well, I'm not saying that it's more than one school, but I think that everyone has to accept that you can't, as you have been doing, talk about religion as if it's only the good bits of religion, or religious schools as if it's only the good bits of religious schools.
No, we're talking about religion. Human beings make mistakes, and actually in secular schools, the kids are being indoctrinated in all sorts of things.
Well, I don't
and they're not actually, and they are also getting a Disney-fied view of religion.
Okay. In secular schools, in secular schools, kids are being indoctrinated into all sorts of things.
What's the antithesis of religion? Let's frame this. Let's reframe it. What do we want children, 5-year-olds, as you said, to grow up on? Porn? Violence? Drugs? Hedonism? It's all there. It's all open. Is that what you want them to grow up on?
Rabbi Jonathan Romain.
Thank you.
Secular schools, are they teaching children porn?
At the age of 5.
We can carry on forever lobbing statistics or anecdotes. The real hard fact is that faith schools in the country are the only schools that are allowed to discriminate in terms of admission of pupils and employment of teachers. In terms of the curriculum. And that's really not healthy to have discrimination as part of the religious system. And I think, to be honest...
What are the moral backbone? What about the moral backbone of children? What about those basic things? Even if you don't... you believe it comes from God, but even if you, Anthony, or you, Stephen, don't believe that these principles come from God, it's not a bad thing to teach children, thou shalt not lie, thou shalt not steal.
It would be lovely, Nicky, if they did teach a good moral backbone. But our experience, we sent a child to a local school. We scouted out to try and find a school that could actually teach things other than religion, that could actually encompass the values I hold dear, learning, and actually showing a community spirit that isn't just based on one religion. We found a school, so we thought, but eventually they struggled so hard to fit us into their Christian-focused system that they ended up sending us to Coventry.
Interesting, you sent to a Christian school.
All schools in this country are Christian by virtue of the law that says there has to be an act of religious worship on a daily basis.
OK, Mark?
Christianity has acted as a glue to give us a cultural identity in this land, a tolerance which welcomes people of other religions and other backgrounds.
Extraordinarily intolerant towards us.
And a moral framework which we are departing from, hence you get the London riots, you've got lack of respect for parents, you've got, you've got truancy in schools because people don't respect their parents.
Well, the London riots as a result partly of the lack of the moral framework which came from the lack of religion, the dearth of religion.
A dearth of religion. If you have Christianity, it embeds true morals into people. It gives a cohesiveness to our culture.
There are centuries of violence to speak against that argument.
Stephen's a historian on this. Stephen, the lack of morality...
Sorry, carry on.
Whatever. Yeah. The lack of morality that some people perceive in our society, is it due to the disintegration of our basic moral framework, which is because of the losing our religion?
Right.
Is it?
No, it's not. If you look across the developed democracies, you find that those that are most religious often have the biggest problems in terms of crime, in terms of sexually transmitted disease.
Proof.
Look it up. It is a fact. No, it's just a fact, which is very inconvenient for those.
You're accepting.
Well, secondly, and this is the more important point, if you, well, here's a source for you. Look at a book called The Altruistic Personality, written by Pearl and Samuel Oyner, who looked into the backgrounds of those who rescued Jews. during the Holocaust. Religious people will often say, oh, it was religion that motivated them, it was religion that marked them out as special. It was not. What marks out the rescuers from the non-rescuers is that they've been raised in a non-authoritarian way. They have been raised to think and question rather than passively accept whatever when you get philosophy, you can encourage people to think in these kind of ways, to think and question inside religious schools, and that's fine, or outside religious schools. I'm not too bothered about whether it's done in a religious setting or not, but as long as it is done. It's very important that children are encouraged to think and question, because we need to...
Sorry, Jenny, that happens, doesn't it, in faith schools?
Can I just say, without faith schools, without specifically Christian schools, there wouldn't be schools at all in this country. My own school was founded by monks in the 16th century. And let me tell you about the Muslim schools in Kenya. Because they're not preparing children for the modern world, they're actually asking Christians to come in and do the teaching.
In what ways are they not preparing children for the modern world?
They're teaching them about a medievalist way of life, which is the orientation of Islam. You go back to the Golden Age. It's all about going back to Muhammad. It's it really is truly a religious system that's not actually preparing you for this world, it's preparing you for the life afterwards.
I'll get your story in a minute, Nick, so get ready. Yeah, you've had your hand up for ages. I'll try and get round some audience.
I think it's really important to distinguish between faith schools and teaching religion in schools, because you can teach religion in schools without sort of propagating sort of what a belief system. So you can lay out all the different religions and talk about it in a more philosophical way. Whereas faith schools, it's the outside of the lesson parts that can alienate some children who don't perhaps adopt that faith.
And up here, I think that. Good morning.
Morning. Yeah, I think there's a couple of different points here. There's what we want from a child's education, what we want the end product to be for a child, which I think a lot of religions share those values, and they're not exclusive to religion by any means. It's love, it's compassion, it's understanding, it's inquiry. The issue then is the mechanisms that are used to teach those tools to the children. I think a lot of parents in the UK are kind of religious with a small r, so they're very conflicted about the ways to teach these sets of things like understanding and love. And so they may use religion, but then with religion comes various truth claims and various facts that then have to be disseminated as well to the child. So then there's a conflict between all these great feelings and attributes you want to teach your children, but hold on a sec, with that comes this set of beliefs as well. And then you get into things like truth claims about the age of the earth, you know, self-pity, being born straight into sin, and all that's really then destructive for the child and for adults in general as well.
Thank you. Gentlemen up here.
That's what we adopt that, to have schools that teach about all faiths
Rabbi, we've got
and
gentlemen back
respect
here.
all religions.
Back at the class. Right. Hi.
I'd like to question the question in a couple of ways. One is, what on earth do we mean by religion? Most of the other kind of naturalists here seem to be assuming a kind of traditionalist concept of religion, but actually, in an evolutionary timescale, the earliest incontrovertible evidence for religion is 65,000 years ago. Most evolutionary anthropologists think probably 200,000 years ago. All of what we're talking about as religion here is relatively recent.
In terms of a day, it's 3 seconds to midnight. You know, that's basically it,
we need
isn't
a
it?
much more naturalistic, functional concept of what religion is.
Nick, your story. You were at a religious school, and then you came out as what at the end?
An atheist.
An atheist,
Yeah.
right? Okay.
I went through. I went through Catholic education from primary school to sixth form, and I was the head boy at the secondary school and the sixth form. And yeah, the final ceremonies, if you will, at the end of sixth form, during my speech, I said to them I was an atheist. I felt it was right to say that.
Out of nowhere? It was your...
Well, it's within the speech. It was just a small section of the speech, but I mean...
What was the reaction?
Well, mostly positive, you know. The Monsignor of, you know, of our area was there, and he was actually leading the Mass, which he stepped down from the bishop. And he, like, put his hand on my shoulder and said, "You're a brave man."
Really?
But then he was like, but then obviously like I get
there's a caveat, as they say in Latin.
Yeah, obviously like from religious teachers in the school and also from the Monsignor, they were like, you're a silly boy, But
you're a brave
boy.
But that shows that actually, despite primary and secondary of a Catholic, you actually were able to make up your mind.
Yeah.
So you will take with you that knowledge, that morality, and it'll be with you for the rest of your life, and you made up your mind.
Whether or not the morality stems from religion is a different matter.
I'll tell you what you're saying, Nick.
Whether or not morality stems from religion is a different matter, though. Because you're linking morality
Did you
with
learn
religion.
anything from? Can you be quiet, please? Did you learn anything from the moral teaching that you got at school through a Catholic prism with an M?
Well,
Did you learn
I think
anything
the moralities more stem from the parent upbringing than the school. I think it's the job of the parents to deliver that rather than the school. The school is the school.
Schools can't function if they don't do that.
He may have been a brave boy. Whether or not it was the right thing to do at the school leaving ceremony as head boy to say something which you know,
I kind of like his style.
There's another point I'd like to make.
You like his style too, don't you?
Absolutely. I think that's what religion does. Religion gives you that freedom and that courage.
But there's one other point, and the more important point. He's also, dare I say it, a young man, and it may well be the case, as I am sure it is the case with many, many people who have a religious education, and then when they reach your age, like I did, they break away from it, and they take them a very, very long time to find their path back to it, but eventually they are grateful for having received a religious education because it has given them, as it were, a moral compass and a spiritual wherewithal to navigate very choppy waters that, as a young man, you haven't even begun to dip your toe in.
Then how do you suppose I decided that I was an atheist to begin with?
You've obviously come to the view that how you're able to, I don't know. I mean, it seems to me, actually, how you're able to know that there's no God is actually a difficult position.
Anthony.
I think it's a very comfortable notion that people will always come back to the religion later on. I think at the time, though, when children are at school, there are real and present dangers in certain schools that have very fixed beliefs. For example, a child growing up in a religious school that doesn't teach about homosexuality, and there are many of them. A child... Well, teach the... OK, you're absolutely right.
Well, there was a riot this week. Let's address the riot. Last week, the last couple of weeks, there's been this riot with the Catholic...
Education Service,
we had a petition amongst school children against gay marriage.
Yeah, there were
The government stepped in, they're looking at it.
That's right. There were some students in one Catholic school who were extremely angry and distressed, and, well, a whole raft of negative reactions to something the Catholic Education Service did, which was to send round to all state-funded Catholic schools pointing out statements by archbishops about gay marriage and encouraging students to sign a petition against the recognition of civil same-sex marriage. And one of the things that teachers were presenting at this school was that these things were unnatural, that the Catholic belief was against them. And many of the students, you're right, that the story last week was that they were quite distressed by this. And I think that is the sort of risk that religious schools do create. There are people within a school who are going to be...
particularly around sexual ethics, is a real test for... Because religious frameworks always have views about it. And I think a school with a religious foundation... Well, a school with a religious foundation has a real issue there about how they deal with those things.
Yeah,
if I talk about Church of England schools are not faith schools. Church of England schools have inclusive admissions. By and large, there are some exceptions, but by and large, schools that were started for the...
That's really not true.
That is true.
You just put your name to a report last week which said that all children at Church of England schools should have a personal encounter with the person of Jesus Christ. That was your name, Jan Ainsworth.
Look at the wording.
And I think the real point is that we want schools that are all inclusive.
With the Christian faith.
A meaningful encounter
with the Christian faith.
With Jesus Christ, you said.
Which means your religious education should take faith seriously. It should enable every child, whatever background they come from...
Then why did you specify Jesus Christ? Why didn't you talk about all faith?
Because that's at the heart of the Christian religion.
Yes, but we're talking about state-funded schools, which should be in education, not indoctrination.
That's not the whole of it. But at the very least, amongst all of the religious education, and all religious education should take all faiths seriously. But because a school, Church of England school, has a Christian foundation, at the very least, it should do a good job on enabling children to engage with the Christian faith. That's what we're after, not making them become Christians. The school in the parish where I live
85% of the children come from Muslim families. Yeah. It's just as much an obligation for those children to understand something about the Christian faith as it is for children from Christian families to understand other faiths. That's what good religious education is.
I agree.
It doesn't matter about admissions. Yeah. It doesn't matter about who goes. Okay. Every child should be able to have that serious encounter with faith.
Jenny,